Hi, I wanted to record a video as was suggested to me by my mom and my fiance about maybe some current event type topics in the church or maybe even venturing into politics. I hate looking at myself, so just bear with me, and you may not be looking at me if I decide to turn the camera around at any moment, or I might try to look away and not at the phone. This might cover current events, as I said, theological topics, other ecclesiastical related matter. But for a test, I'd like to cover two topics that I've been seeing float on Facebook that are really blown out of proportion by members of the more liberal, the more leftist sect in the church, and the very right sect. Without putting labels on things, you could say very conservative and very liberal. Not that I'm not very conservative. I am. I'm proud to be that. However, there's qualifiers when with everything. You have people in this case who feel that Pope Francis is what's known as an anti-pope. You had anti-popes during the Middle Ages. You couldn't certify papal elections. At that point, most of them they had two candidates. One pope would try to poison another pope, the anti-pope or what have you, until technology grew, rules came into place for papal elections. You could have one legitimately elected pope and an anti-pope. That's why for years we weren't sure what pope number we were on. If certain popes counted or not, if certain elections are valid, if they legitimately took office, what have you. So that would be a definition of an anti-pope. People believe that Francis is an anti-pope. They believe that Pope Benedict's resignation, even though provided for in canon law, was not properly manifest because he's still living and active relative within his monastery, Mater Ecclesiae in the Vatican Gardens, and still makes the occasional public appearance and still meets and greets people. So that's a definition and a categorization of what people feel that Pope Francis is, just to put some background or backstory into this video. Back to the original topics. Two things have been floating on Facebook, one of which is a simple papal appointment that has no bearing on any future, and another is a simple Vatican protocol which came to light recently, and that the Vatican has already suggested they may amend in the near future. The first one: many dioceses across the United States of America this year are celebrating major anniversaries, whether it be 150 years, 100 years, what have you. For instance, this year the Diocese of Lexington, Kentucky turns 30. The Diocese of Knoxville in Tennessee turns 31 this April. The diocese in question, for this video particularly, is the Diocese of Scranton, northeastern Pennsylvania. Covers Scranton, Hazleton, Williamsport, where the Little League World Series is. Williamsport's probably the most western point in the diocese, I would imagine, if I got my geography right. If you're familiar with the town of Matamoras on the New York state line with Pennsylvania. That would be probably the most eastern point in the diocese. Scranton was big for the Lackawanna Railroad. It's in Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania. But anyhow, that's a little geography and history. The Diocese of Scranton celebrates 150 years this year. Has a long history of being very faithful to Holy Mother Church. The late Cardinal O'Connor in New York, John O'Connor, was an auxiliary or priest of the diocese before going to the military archdiocese as auxiliary and then coming back to Scranton as bishop before being appointed as Archbishop of New York. So that's a little bit of the faithful history of the diocese, but it is a faithful diocese primarily outside of those few population centers that I mentioned, primarily rural, primarily mountainous because of the Pocono Mountains and the Endless Mountains. However, this year the diocese turns 150. Bishops of dioceses can request that the Holy Father, if he does not wish to visit himself, can send an envoy, a papal envoy. In this case, the papal envoy is the retired Archbishop of Los Angeles, Cardinal Roger Mahony, with whom Mother Angelica had serious back and forth discussions. Cardinal Mahony is of the liberal side of the church. However, he did permit the traditional Latin Mass to be celebrated in some parishes within the Archdiocese of Los Angeles during his time. There are certain very valid points of him. In 2013, upon Pope Francis's election, Cardinal Mahony sent out a very disparaging tweet on his Twitter feed, blasting Pope Benedict for being conservative, for wearing lace vestments, what have you, and Francis choosing not to wear lace vestiture, being very simplistic in his dress. Cardinal Mahony loved it. Said that he was so glad that papal lace and ermine were out of the picture and, not wearing the red shoes in Francis's case. The Vatican Pope Francis chose to discipline His Eminence by not stripping him of his title as cardinal, but not having any cardinalatial duties. Voting in a papal conclave. He's over 80 at this point. He can't. That's basically the only cardinalatial duty in that case. Well, back to the papal envoy to Scranton. Mahony was appointed as papal envoy to Scranton. To make a long story short, the papal envoy celebrates the Mass that he would be, most times, doesn't always have to, but generally would celebrate the Mass. In this case, it would be at the Cathedral of St. Peter in Scranton. And read the papal letter of appointment, read a greeting from the Holy Father for the diocese's 150th anniversary, and at the end of the Mass, offer the pontifical blessing, which would be a papal blessing extending to all of you there. There might be an indulgence with it. I'm not sure. That's something I would have to research. And the papal blessing would be the same as what would be known as a pontifical blessing, even though bishops can give pontifical blessings. If you've ever noticed, bishop blessings are Father, Son, Holy Spirit. There's 3 crosses rather than just one. That's a pontifical blessing that bishops also give. In this case, the papal envoy doing it, it would have another authority with it. That's one of the main reasons papal envoys are sent. There are no duties with the papal envoy. In this case, outside of a liturgical function that, by virtue of His Eminence's ordination to the priesthood and the episcopate, has within him. His faculties have not been revoked or suspended. He's still priest and bishop and cardinal in good standing, but cannot perform any cardinalatial duties. Voting for a pope is above 80. End of story. People are making a big fuss. He shouldn't have been appointed to this position. He was not appointed to a position that has any greater standing than just the liturgical function of the Mass on March 3rd, I believe it is. Or March 4th. That's it. It's all it is. The day's done. Those privileges end for Cardinal Mahoney. I digress. To the first topic I mentioned in this video. There was a recent brouhaha on LifeSite News, which, if you've ever come across LifeSite, is a very ultra, we take everything to heart type of website. LifeSite News is very anti-Pope Francis. They felt that the Holy Father should not have given a Dutch member of a Dutch entourage, when the leader of Holland, or the Netherlands as it's called, visited Pope Francis, an award because she supposedly promoted safe abortions and the widening and loosening of abortion laws within the Netherlands. If you follow Dutch politics, it's an extremely liberal country. It allows open marijuana smoking. It's had for years. It allows the purchase of condoms on streets through what resemble to us as soda machines. And it also allows euthanasia for infants, toddlers, elderly, basically anybody you don't want. This LifeSite News was up in arms about everything in regards to the giving this entourage representative a medal. Pope didn't do that at all. It is a standard practice of Vatican protocol when heads of state visit to give a gift to the head of state, and the head of state give the gift to the Pope. The Pope is a head of a country, Vatican City. He's a head of state. Therefore, legitimates there are legitimate reasons why this happens. Excuse me. So therefore, he gives him the gift. Was not even given to this lady personally by the Holy Father. This website and other very traditional people in the church are saying it shouldn't have been done. The Pope is supporting abortion. It's absolutely horrible. The Pope did not know about this medal being given. He didn't know about this person's work with abortion. This morning, Greg Burke, an American, who's the Holy See's press office director, said, Pope had nothing to do with this. It's standard protocol for members of foreign government entourages to be given gifts or medals either there or when they return to their native country or home country, shall we say. Pope had nothing to do with it. Pope is innocent in this regard, as he is with every other matter. He is not the liberal that people make him out to be. Not at all. He, in fact, is very conservative and mighty traditional in a lot of matters that he has done. Style is a different story. Everyone has a different style. It's the content and matter of what is being taught, and that is in continuity with church teaching. Read the documents, read the daily mass homilies, read everything, not in the context of liberal media or very conservative media for that regard. It's absolutely horrible what Raymond Arroyo has done on EWTN, saying the Pope has allowed divorced and remarried Catholics who have not received church annulments to receive communion. That's not happened at all. Not at all. The issue on that case, if you're in that situation, you get the annulment, or you don't present yourself for Holy Communion on your own. That ball's in the person's court who needs the annulment. There are certain cases, yes, where that could be seen as a venial sin, but it is very, very outside the box. St. Thomas Aquinas said so, but there is a moral, legitimate reason why that would be a venial sin, primarily having to do with coercion. For instance, you marry a Muslim. The Muslim might refuse an annulment. Marry an atheist, might refuse an annulment. Rare, possibly rare in certain countries, but the Pope is not the Pope of America, he's the Pope of the entire world. So I hope this video clears up for some things. Again, Papal envoy, no duties except for the liturgical function. That's it. Has nothing to do with it. Pope is free to name any person that he so chooses. They're primarily cardinals, but any person he sees fit for a papal envoy. They would obviously have to be a bishop. And secondly, Pope is innocent with regards to the Dutch abortionist receiving a medal. The Vatican is investigating a possible change in that protocol to prevent something like this happen. That would come from the Vatican Secretariat of State, probably the second section, which is in regards to relations with foreign states. The first section is general Vatican dealings, general correspondence. The second section of the Secretariat of State, relations with states. The third section, which is a brand new independent section, is relations with papal nuncios, Vatican ambassadors. So that's a little bit of a tidbit for you, as useless as it might be, but that's it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope this clears up some other matters for you, and I pray that God blesses you. Thank you.